Blessings to all our blessed ones family. Are you ready to find out epic motivational speeches by the top CEOs? Okay, grab onto your phone, turn up your volume, focus tight, and enjoy this fun, empowering video we created for your enjoyment. Our number one goal is to expand your knowledge. Okay, here we go. If you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you join the family so you don't miss any of the fun content we make for your empowerment. Also, don't forget to smash that like button and post our videos to your social media. Your friends will thank you for it.
Many kids and many grown-ups do figure out over time what their passions are. And sometimes we let I don't think it's that hard. I think what happens though sometimes is that we let our intellectual selves overrule those passions. And so that's what needs to be guarded against.
My job, one of my jobs as the leader of Amazon, is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are by their very nature prone to failure. But big successes, a few big successes compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments.
Invest in communication skills. How to motivate people, small groups, medium-sized groups, large groups. How do you write in a way that's pithy and to the point? Today's world of writing and texting has actually created a problem because you think writing in 20 characters can convey what a good document can, okay? I'm sure to you all, the same 20 characters convey the same message that, the Gettysburg Address did, but unfortunately that's not true. You have to learn how to communicate because when you're communicating with large groups of employees, I'm assuming that you'll want to move up the ladder, how you communicate and motivate them is critically important. And if you don't learn it early in life, you're never going to learn it later on.
So as Jonah was alluding to, there are a lot of negative things in the world. There's a lot of terrible things that are happening all over the world, all the time. There are lots of problems that need to get solved. There's lots of things that are miserable and kind of get you down. But life cannot just be about solving one miserable problem after another. That can't be the only thing. There need to be things that inspire you, that make you glad to wake up in the morning and be part of humanity. That's why we did this. This guy called Tsiolkovsky, one of the early Russian rocket scientists, the great saying, "Earth is the cradle of humanity, but you cannot stay in the cradle forever." It is time to go forth, become a star-faring civilization, be out there among the stars, expand the scope and scale of human consciousness. I find that incredibly exciting. That makes me glad to be alive. I hope you feel the same way.
Calendar gets very full with those, and then at night, after the kids have gone to bed, I'm on email a great deal. I get messages during the day, that's my chance to give long responses, and then over the weekend, I send a lot of mail as well. I take 2 weeks a year to just go off and read and think, where I'm not interrupted by work or anything else. I'm just solidly trying to think about the future, and people get to send me things to read as part of that so-called Think Week. So it's a nice mix of things. About 25% of the time that I'm out traveling around, meeting with customers, Europe, Asia, and that sort of helps me think, okay, do we have the right priorities? What are people responding well to, and what would they like to see us do better?
My husband and I married for 34 years, and we have 2 daughters. And every day you have to make a decision on whether you are going to be a wife or a mother. In fact, many times during the day, you have to make those decisions. And you have to co-opt a lot of people to help you. We co-opted our families to help us. We plan our lives meticulously so we can be decent parents. But if you ask our daughters, I'm not sure they will say that I've been a good mom. I'm not sure. And I try all kinds of coping mechanisms. I mean, I'll tell you a story that happened when my daughter went to Catholic school, Convent of Sacred Heart. And every Wednesday morning, they have class coffee with mothers. Class coffee with mothers for a working woman. How is it going to work? How am I going to take off 9 o'clock on Wednesday mornings to go for a class coffee? So I miss most class coffees. My daughter would come home and she'll say, list of all the mothers that were there, and you were not their mom. First few times, I would die with guilt. But I developed coping mechanisms. I called the school and I said, give me a list of mothers who were not there. So when she came home in the evening, she'd say, you were not there, you were not there. I said, Mrs. Rag wasn't there, Mrs. So-and-so wasn't there, so I'm not the only bad mother. You have to cope because you die with guilt. You just die with guilt.
Just keep doing the same old thing you were doing before. You have to take your skills and attack the new frontiers. For example, graphical interface used to be outside the operating system. And so there were many people doing those systems. Windows came out ahead there, and now it comes with the operating system. Likewise, the browser is something that Netscape looked at turning the browser into an operating system, and we looked at taking our operating system and building the browser in an integrated fashion. And so that was a good example.
But let's just imagine that when we finish, I'm going to let each one of you pick out the car of your choice. Sounds good, doesn't it? Pick it out, any color, you name it. It'll be tied up with a bow, and it'll be at your house tomorrow. And you say, well, what's the catch? And the catch is that it's the only car you're going to get in your lifetime. Now, what are you going to do knowing that that's the only car you're ever going to have and you love that car? You're going to take care of it like you cannot believe. Now, what I'd like to suggest, you're not going to get only one car in your lifetime, but you're going to get one body and one mind, and that's all you're going to get. And that body and mind feels terrific now, but it has to last you a lifetime.
Is when JFK went to go visit the NASA Space Center, and he saw a janitor holding a broom, and he asked him what he was doing, and the janitor replied, "Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on the moon." Purpose is that feeling that you are a part of something bigger than yourself, that you are needed, and that you have something better ahead to work for. Purpose is what creates true happiness. As I've traveled around, I've sat with children in juvenile detention and opioid addicts who've told me that maybe their lives would have turned out differently if they just had something to do, an after-school program or somewhere to go. I've met factory workers who know their old jobs aren't coming back and are just trying to find their path ahead. For our society to keep moving forward, we have a generational challenge to not only create new jobs, but create a renewed sense of purpose. I remember that night I launched Facebook from that little dorm in Kirkland House. I went to Noakes with my friend KX, and I remember telling him clearly that I was excited to help connect the Harvard community, but one day someone would connect the whole world. The thing is, it never even occurred to me that that someone might be us. We were just college kids. We didn't know anything about that. There were all these great big technology companies with all these resources, and I just assumed one of them would do it. But this idea was so clear to us that all people want to connect. So we just kept working on it, day after day after day. And I know that a lot of you are going to have your own stories just like this.
That telephone cemented my fascination with technology. I remember in my parents' house in Chennai reading about the invention of the transistor at Bell Labs. Of course, that initial invention helped found what became known as Silicon Valley, and out of that came companies like Fairchild Semiconductor and Intel and all the computers and software that we all use today. you can draw a direct line from that invention to the technology that powers your Twitter feed or your WeChat messages today. I remember reading about that and thinking, it's the idea that matters. It didn't matter where you come from or what your background is. One revolutionary idea, one brilliant invention can unleash other entrepreneurs to revolutionize industries in ways you could never predict. The people who build the transistor in many ways enable the entrepreneurs who are using incredible processing power to analyze data and diagnose cancer. In the same way, the invention of smartphones and GPS has enabled other companies to build apps that revolutionize the way we travel around cities.
My great-grandfather, who was a marginal farmer, had just passed away, leaving my great-grandmother a young widow with 2 sons and no source of income. To provide for her sons and their future, she had to move to a town nearby and make some difficult choices. She became a domestic servant, but still could only afford to send one of her sons to school. While the 2 boys were close in age, both in grade school, one was seen as being more responsible, while the other was a bit of a troublemaker. My great-grandmother opted to send the more responsible, diligent son, viewed as having more potential, into the workforce. He became a day laborer at a construction site. He would continue in that field for the rest of his life, never given the opportunity to gain new skills and gain higher-level employment. The other son was sent to the local school, and that boy was my grandfather. Despite being seen as being less responsible, he continued through school and eventually became a police officer. Despite entering the workforce nearly a decade after his brother, his starting salary was exponentially higher. It was my grandfather's education and the eventual career that enabled my father to pursue his own education, which eventually allowed me to follow my own passions. The opportunity my grandfather was given impacted the trajectories of the generations to come. This personal story reflects that often repeated adage, talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not.
Thing is to decide, is to be able to define which ones you can come to an intelligent decision on and which ones are beyond your capacity to evaluate. You don't have to be right about thousands and thousands and thousands of companies. You only have to be right about a couple. I met Bill Gates on July 5th, 1991. We were out in Seattle, and Bill said, "You've got to have a computer." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well," he said, "you can do your income tax on it." I said, "I don't have any income. Berkshire doesn't pay a dividend." He said, "Well, you can keep track of your portfolio." And I said, "I only have one stock." I said, and he says, "It's going to change everything." And I said, "Well, will it change whether people chew gum?" And he said, "Well, probably not." And I said, "Well, will it change what kind of gum they chew?" And not. And I said, "Well, then I'll stick to chewing gum and you stick to computers, you know." I don't have to understand all kinds of business. There's all kinds of business I don't understand. But there's thousands of opportunities there. I did understand the Bank of America, you know.
Thank you for watching, subscribing, and liking our content. Stay blessed, my brothers and sisters.